You know that feeling when you walk out of a 3-day strategy retreat completely drained, feeling like you just wasted all that time staring at whiteboards? Yeah, we've all been there. Welcome to this explainer on a truly fascinating breakthrough called Luminous SWOT Ecology. Today, we're diving into how to upgrade a decades-old business tool into a mathematically superior, command and operations grade strategic intelligence system. If you want to see how top-tier organizations are using living systems mathematics to actually drive real strategy rather than just, listing complaints in a boardroom, you are in the exact right place. So, let's kick things off with the number 60. 60 years. That is how long we've been leaning on a framework designed way back in the 1960s at the Stanford Research Institute. I mean, think about the 1960s for a second. Computers were the size of a small apartment. Business moved at the breakneck speed of a fax machine or a rotary phone. And yet, here we are, still using a framework from that exact era to navigate today's hyper-complex AI-driven landscape. It's kind of crazy when you really stop and think about it. Now, to be fair, Albert Humphrey and his team at SRI had a really great original intent for the SWOT analysis. They recognized that the problem wasn't the planning itself, it was the diagnostic foundation beneath it. Organizations were strategizing without truly knowing themselves, so they built this famous 2x2 grid as a forcing function for honest self-inventory. And look, it absolutely still delivers some baseline value. A 2019 meta-analysis showed that just doing a structured assessment gives you a 17% performance boost, simply because a flawed mirror is better than no mirror at all. But the fundamental issue that holds it back today, it treats living, breathing companies like static, predictable machines. So in this explainer, we're going to dismantle that old scarcity-based framework. We'll quickly cover the limits of traditional SWOT, explore the Luminous upgrade, break down the 4 essential movements, dive into the math and ROI, and finally, look at how to make it operational. Let's get right into it. Part 1, the limits of traditional SWOT, or the consciousness problem. Honestly, most traditional SWOTs devolve into glorified wish lists and collective anxieties because they operate from a deeply flawed consciousness of scarcity, defense, and static positioning. Moving into Part 2, the Luminous upgrade, organizations as living networks. And let me be crystal clear right out of the gate. The Luminous SWOT Ecology upgrade is not some soft, feel-good team-building exercise. It is an operationally rigorous, intelligent system that treats your organization as a living, adaptive network. Which brings us to Part 3, the 4 essential movements, dismantling the 2x2 grid. We are systematically going to flip the traditional 4 quadrants on their head to transition from a mindset of extractive defense to a thriving ecology. Movement 1 shifts us from hoarding our strengths as defensive possessions to expressing them as gifts that the ecosystem actually needs. We're anchoring heavily into David Cooperrider's appreciative inquiry here. His decades of research proved something incredible. Organizations move in the exact direction of what they study. If you just study your deficits, well, you create maps of your own inadequacy. But if you study and steward your gifts, those capabilities multiply. Imagine a tech team realizing their core strength isn't just coding fast, but a gift for translating complex user anxiety into seamless design. Framed as a gift, that capability literally explodes in value. Movement 2 reframes static weaknesses into dynamic developmental edges. Instead of obsessing over where we're falling short and just trying to patch a static deficit, this pinpoints exactly where your organization's next stage of evolutionary capability is gestating. Say your company lacks a strong digital presence. Instead of viewing that as a static weakness, which just makes everyone feel behind, you view it as a developmental edge. It's a clear signal from the market, pulling you towards your next evolution. It completely changes the energy in the room. Next up, Movement 3. This transforms extractive opportunities into sacred invitations. We stop asking what external conditions we can exploit for a quick win, and instead ask, what is the living field calling us to become? This ties right into Kate Roberts' donut economics, generating sustainable value throughout the entire ecosystem, not just for your internal shareholders. We're also applying Daniel Kahneman's behavioral economics here to correct massive cognitive blind spots. Humans are wired to fear losing $10 twice as much as we desire gaining $10. Traditional SWOT traps us in that survival bias, but this reframe completely corrects it. Movement 4 flips external threats into composting invitations. This one's a real game changer. Instead of an aggressive defensive posture, we ask, what is the universe asking us to let die so something new can be born? This lets your organization metabolize disruption into an adaptive advantage. Traditional threat analysis triggers a somatic panic response. Cortisol spikes, creativity plummets. But in nature, a dying leaf isn't a threat, it's compost. It's fuel. By reframing threats as composting invitations, you prevent that panic response and actually use market disruption as fuel for growth. All right, part 4, the math and ROI, the living systems mathematics. For the analytical operators listening right now, let's look at the hard financial data that proves this ecological framing is an absolute operational necessity. The numbers completely back this up. According to a 2021 Harvard Business Review analysis, organizations that master learning agility, which is exactly the core capacity developed by our developmental edge reframe, outperform their peers by a staggering 25% in revenue and 19% in profit margins. If you can learn and adapt faster than the competition, you aren't just surviving, you are capturing a massive premium. Then there's this, 2.4 times. A 2020 Deloitte Insight study tracking over 1,000 organizations demonstrated that companies with mature, rigorous strategic practices deliver 2.4 times the total shareholder return over 10 years compared to companies relying on ad hoc planning. That is the very real cost of treating strategic planning like a thrown-together annual chore. And McKinsey's data is just as compelling, especially when we tie it back to our composting concept. It shows that companies that quickly integrate threat signals capture a 30% earnings premium in the 3 years right after a major disruption. When you view a threat as an invitation to compost old ideas, you adapt and capture that premium while your competitors are literally frozen in fear. So it all comes down to cumulative value. Just imagine applying this to a standard mid-market, 500-person organization with $100 million in revenue. The integrated Luminous premium yields a massive $14.5 million in annual value. That translates to a year-one ROI of up to 97-1 on a typical $150,000 engagement. The portfolio effect of these ecological practices compounding together is absolutely undeniable. Finally, Section 5, making it operational. Deploying Alpha SWOT. Because how do we actually deploy this in the real world without getting bogged down in theory? Well, Alpha SWOT operationalizes this through 5 distinct phases over 6 weeks. From ecological positioning, appreciative strengths inventory, developmental edge mapping, and living field opportunity scan, all the way to composting and emergence threat integration. This entirely replaces that static, easily forgotten quarterly ritual with a continuous, integrated diagnostic engine that actively reads your organization. This toolkit uses complex network modeling, like Metcalfe's law and real options theory, to output defensible, nonlinear strategic clarity. Add in Kahneman's debiasing protocols and exportable board-ready financial outputs, and you have a system that directly interfaces with the CRM and project management tools you already use every single day. So I want to leave you with this final provocation, to fundamentally reevaluate your organization's identity. What is your living system asking you to let die so that something new can be born? Because treating your company as a living, breathing system isn't just an optimistic choice, it's your ultimate strategic advantage. Thank you so much for joining me for this explainer. Step out of the 1960s, start treating your company like the ecosystem it truly is, and I'll catch you next time.